Today I'm going to set up Pi-Hole. This is a DNS service that you can host locally. It'll allow you to do DNS resolution for local domains, as well as block ads and other unwanted websites. If you're interested in seeing how I do this, come check it out. Okay, so I'm signed into Proxy here, and I'm going to install Pi-Hole two ways. The first is going to be on a bare bones Debian install, and the second is using Docker. Now, the reason this video took so long to come out is because I was having some issues with the Docker virtual machine and the NFS shares permissions. I still haven't been able to figure out why I'm having a problem with it. I'll show you what I'm talking about later. But in the meantime, I will show you the install on Debian. So I'm just going to clone my template. I'll call this one DNS because that's what Pi-Hole is for. We're going to do a full clone. And now that the clone is complete, I'm just going to start up this VM. And you can see I've got an IP address here. I'm going to SSH into that system and I'll be right back. Alright, so I'm SSH'd into that new virtual machine that was called DNS, you can see here. But I'm going to switch back to my browser. And you can see I've got the Pi-Hole.net opened up here. To install it, I'm just going to use their install script. It's right here on number 2. You click install Pi-Hole and bring it to this window, and it's a simple one-line install. So I'm going to copy this, and then I'll switch back to the terminal. And in here, I'm just going to paste that one-line command. I'm going to install curl. And now that curl's installed, I'm going to run that one command. So the install script's going to give you a couple of prompts along the way. This first one is just telling you what it's going to do. It's going to install a network-wide ad blocker. Then it's giving you directions on how you can donate to this project. I would highly recommend it. This is a phenomenal project, and these guys have put a lot of work into it. Now it's warning you that you need a static IP address, and what this installer is going to do is assign your current IP as a static IP address. It will no longer reach out to your DHCP server. So have your IP address set to where you want it to be before you run this installer. You select an upstream DNS provider. So anything that's not going to be blocked by the filter on here is going to be passed on to the upstream DNS provider you select here. I typically like to go with Quad 9 filtered because it also has ad filtering on it and malicious website filtering as well. So I'm going to select Quad 9. And it's telling you here that you need a third-party list in order to block ads. It's asking you if you want to use Stephen Black's Unified Hosts list, and I'm going to say yes to that. Do you want to install the admin web interface? Yes. A web server is required for the admin web interface. I'm going to say yes to that. And would you like to enable query logging? I'm going to say yes to these just so that I have it on the default. It's going to be basically the same as what you'll have off of the Docker image that we're going to install later on. And then it's going to run through and complete all the setup. And that's pretty much it. It's hardly worth showing you. It's a one script install and it's very simple. But you can see here it's telling you that they've created a password for you. So you can write this down or you can change the password through the terminal. So I'll show you that, and it's very easy. Use Pi-Hole-A for admin, -P for password, and it's just going to ask you to enter in your new password. So you can type that in here, and then you'll have to repeat it. Oops. I'll do that again. because I can't talk and type at the same time. And it's as easy as that. This Pi-Hole is now ready to go. So if I were to go back to the browser, open a new window, and go to the IP address, I believe it was 105. Oops. And you have to go to admin, otherwise it won't work. You can see Pi-Hole is running and it's ready to go. But this is not how I'm planning on leaving it, so I'm going to go back to Proxmox here. I'm going to shut down this virtual machine, and then I'm going to remove it. So now I'm going to install Pi-Hole on Docker so that I have it running in its final form. I'm going to go to the terminal where I'm already SSH'd into my Docker instance. I'm going to go to the mount directory, apps, and in here I'm going to create a directory called Pi-Hole. I'll go into that directory and I'm going to create a compose file that's going to start up this container. I'll switch back to the I'll switch back to my browser, and in here, oops, that's the wrong one. I'm going to go to the Docker Hub official Pi-Hole, and if I scroll down, you can see we've got a compose file right here. I'm going to copy that, switch back to my terminal, and then I'll just paste that in here. Now there's a few things I'm not going to need because I'm not going to use this as a DHCP server, but you can if you want to. But I'm going to get rid of this because I'm not using it for that. I don't need the version number on this type of compose file. I'm going to change the environment so that it shows my area code, which is Edmonton. Oops. And then you'll want to change the password here. There we go. And I'm just going to put this to the super secure password of password. I would recommend something better than that. But this is what you're going to need to sign into the web admin. I don't need these two lines again because I'm not using DHCP, and this compose file is ready to go. So I'm going to write and quit. Oh, one thing to note. I'm using port 80 on here for right now. I'm going to change that in a bit because port 80 is being used by my Nginx proxy manager and it's going to conflict, and I'll show you how I deal with that. So I'm going to say docker ps, and I'm going to shut down that Nginx proxy manager for the time being. And I'm going to say docker compose up-d. So it's going to pull the Pi-Hole image and it's going to start up that container so that I can access it on port 80. And I'll switch back to my browser, and you can see I've got 192.168.240.162. And I'm going to say admin. Okay, so I did something that I commonly do when I'm working with Docker. I quickly said Docker and I gave it the container ID, but I forgot to put stop. So I'm going to say docker stop 55cc. And if I'd have paid attention, I had an error right here. So I'm going to try that again. I've now actually stopped this container, and I'm going to start this Pi-Hole one again. Now it looks like it's started. I'm going to go back to my browser, and I'm going to refresh. That looks better. Now I can sign in with my super secure password here. And I'm going to create a local DNS setting. And I'm going to call this DNS.hardwoodhomelab nginx.com. I'm going to point it to this virtual machine. And I'm going to add. And that worked just as I wanted it to. Now what I can do is I can point my router to this virtual machine for DNS, and this will resolve at least this domain to this virtual machine. And once I've got my router looking to this virtual machine for DNS, I'll be right back. Alright, so my Pi-Hole is now being used for my primary DNS in my Homelab, and I'm going to wreck the internet. So I'm going to say docker compose down, and that's going to stop that Pi-Hole container, and I'm doing that just to illustrate a point. I'm going to go back to my browser, and as a neat party trick here, I'm going to go to a website, maybe some of you have heard of it. I'm going to go to youtube.com. It's not really loading anything. It says I'm offline. I know I have the internet. Let's try another one you may have heard of. Let's go to google.com. Can't find it. And you can see right here it says DNS probe possible. So I'm showing you this so you can see what's going to happen if your DNS server, in this case your Pi-Hole, goes down. This is why it's important to run your DNS on a system that's going to be running continually, otherwise your internet's going to look like it's going down. In my particular instance here, the Proxy system that I've got everything installed on gets shut down at night. So I actually have a Raspberry Pi that runs Pi-Hole at all times. I used the same install script that I showed for the Debian install to get it running on there, and it worked like a charm. So I would recommend doing that if you're going to be shutting down your Proxmox system the same way I do. Anywho, I'm going to switch back to my terminal, and I'm going to start up my nginx proxy manager again. So I'm going to say docker start 55cc. Hey, I got the start this time. And that should be running. Looks like it is. And I'm going to make one more change to my compose file. Since I've got nginx proxy manager running on port 80 here, I'm going to change this so that it's 8080. And then I'm going to start it up again. And now I'm ready to set up a new host on nginx proxy manager. So I'm going to switch to my browser, and I'm going to navigate to my nginx proxy manager. I'll sign in. I'm going to add a proxy host. I'm going to call this one dns.hardwoodhomelab, and it's going to point right back to this same system. I put that on port 8080, and I'm going to go to SSL. I'll use the wildcard I created. I'm going to force SSL, and I'm going to save that. Now, if I navigate to dns.hardwoodhomelab.com/admin, that's important, I can sign in. I'm going to use the password I created that was super secure. Now, I'll show you what issues I've been having with my NFS share, and I cannot figure out why. Groups are a great feature of Pi-Hole, so if you have different people, like say children in the house who have separate devices from everyone else, or you've got a business computer or personal computer. However you want to divide your users, you can create different groups so that they have different rules, and I'll go over the rules in a second. But if I wanted to create a new group here and I click add, for some reason, I'm not sure if you can see this pop up, it says I'm attempting to write a read-only database. I cannot figure out why I'm having this problem, but I can fix it. So I'm going to go back to the terminal. I'm going to stop this container. It really helps if you know how to spell. Okay, Docker compose down. Now I'm going to change into my home directory, and you can see there's nothing here. I'm going to create a new directory in this called Docker, and I'm going to move that Pi-Hole directory I created in the apps over to Docker. So I'm going to copy mnt apps Pi-Hole. I also forgot to put an R on there. R for recursive, so it copies the whole thing. And I'm going to move that into Docker. So now, if I change into Docker, Docker, Pi-Hole, you can see all the files that were created in the apps directory have been moved into the Docker directory on the local file system. So I'm going to start up this container again. I'll switch back to my terminal. I'll reload this page, use my super secure password, and now if I create a new group, it will be added. So yeah, to show you how this works, I'm gonna give this one a kids group. Work group. And we'll say lab. Whoops. Actually, let's call this LAN. Now I don't have the clients to go along with this, but I should be able to see my laptop on here. Okay, so I'll click on known clients here. For some reason my laptop's not showing up, but you can add a client by IP address. So I'm going to do that. This is the laptop I'm running on right now. I'm going to call this laptop. Under domain management here, if you're having issues with a website that's being blocked that you don't want, or there's a website that's being passed through that you do want to block, you can add the domain here, such as, so say you wanted to block Facebook. You can go to you can add facebook.com here to the blacklist, and that will block it. So now if I go to facebook.com, it can't resolve. So I'm going to delete this because I'm going to improve on that. Under add lists. Now in here is where our groups are going to come into play. So Stephen Black, there we go. Stephen Black, the guy who created the original host list, also has other lists available. So there are down here fake news, gambling, porn, and social lists, and you can block them all independently of the ad lists. So the unified hosts is all adware and malware. You can also add different categories for these. And to add one, I'm just going to click on the link. I'm going to right click on the link and copy the link address. And you can go back to the Pi-Hole and add a new list by pasting it on here. This one was called fake news, And we can add that here. Copy link address, paste, copy link address, paste, copy link address, paste. We've got 5 different lists. This is where the groups are great, because say you want fake news blocked for kids. And at work, you can apply that. Which one's this? Gambling. Say you want that blocked site-wide. You can apply it for all. Porn. Maybe you want that for your kids and work. Apply that. And social. For work. Well, you've got 3 different groups with 3 different levels of blocking. And under tools, update gravity. This is where you update those block lists. So I'm going to do that now. There's a whole bunch of settings in here, and if I go through them all, it's going to take quite a while. The 2 biggest things that I would look at: DNS server. On here, I'm using Google by default. I prefer to use Quad 9, so I'm going to switch that. And save. Web interface, very important to use the LCARS theme if you're a Star Trek nerd like myself. And teleporter. This is where you back up your system. So you can click backup. It'll give you a file to download, and you just save that onto your system. If anything goes wrong with your Pi-Hole, you can restore it by inputting it right here. So since I've got Pi-Hole up and running, there's one last thing that I want to do. I'm going to go to local DNS, and I'm going to create a new DNS record. And I'll show you how fast this works. I'm going to go to, I'm going to call this one NP, I guess I don't need a capital, npm.hardwoodhomelab.com. And I'm going to point it back to this VM. And I'm going to go back to Nginx Proxy Manager, and I'm going to create a new host. This one I'm going to call npm, I did capitals again, npm.hardwoodhomelab.com. .240.162, and I'm going to give this one port 81. That points right back to this Nginx Proxy Manager. So I'm going to give this one our wildcard certificate again, and I'm going to force SSL, and I'm going to save that. So now I should be able to log in to this Nginx Proxy Manager from npm.hardwoodhomelab.com. And you can see, oh boy, home local. Oh, I'll sign in, and it's pointing back to this very same container. It's not quite exactly how I had planned, because I was planning on running everything through the apps directory, but you can see even with all the data stored on here, it's only using 36 megabytes. Well, since this Pi-Hole container doesn't use much for storage, I'm going to leave it on the local file system. And that's how I'm leaving things for today. Thanks for watching.